Okay, welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving into a narrative that is just deeply unsettling. It taps right into those primal fears we all have. We're going to break down a sequence of events that takes a completely ordinary, modern-day situation and just twists it into an absolute nightmare. I mean, think about it. We rely so heavily on the walls of our homes to keep us safe, right? And we totally trust our smart tech to be our digital eyes and ears. But what happens when both of those safety nets just snap at the exact same time? Pay super close attention to the timeline we're going over today because the escalation here is literally as rapid as it is terrifying.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to actually put yourself in this exact scenario for a second. It's the dead of night, you hear a noise, you roll over in bed, you grab your phone, pull up your front door camera feed, and nothing. Just total empty silence on the screen. Now, the logical part of your brain is going to say, well, if the camera shows nothing, there's nothing there, right? It was just the wind or maybe a stray raccoon or your house settling. But you know that lingering doubt is still there. So what do? Do you just go back to sleep or do you actually get up to check? Well, the protagonist of the source material we're exploring today had to make that exact choice. Moving on to Section 1, The Midnight Knock, A Quiet Town's Disturbance.
So meet our subject, a completely normal guy named Jake living in a quiet U.S. town. And look, he's not living in some infamous haunted mansion, he's not out in the middle of the creepy isolated woods, and he really has no reason to think he's in any danger. He's just living a mundane, peaceful life. But for Jake, the anomaly kicks off at exactly 2 a.m. And you know, there's a real heavy psychological weight to that specific time. At 2 a.m., the world is just entirely shut down. Traffic is stopped, the neighbors are out cold, and there's this deep, almost heavy isolation covering the town. If something goes down at this hour, you are pretty much completely on your own. It's when we're deep in our sleep cycles, completely vulnerable. And it's at this exact minute that Jake's peaceful reality gets permanently fractured. It all starts with this. Just a simple sound breaking the dead silence of that first night. Knock, knock, knock. Now notice, it's not a frantic pounding. It's not someone desperately trying to kick the door off its hinges. The source text actually frames this as a rhythmic, deliberate sound. And that's creepy, right? Because it implies intention. Someone or something is just standing out there calmly asking to be let in. It's this distinct auditory intrusion that jolts Jake awake and demands his attention. Let's look at Jake's baseline response here. Step 1, he wakes up. Step 2, he immediately checks his smart door camera. He doesn't see anyone. So step 3, he just ignores it and goes right back to sleep. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that Jake relies 100% on his tech to validate reality. Because that screen showed an empty porch, he deduced that the threat just wasn't real. And honestly, this hits the nail on the head regarding our modern false sense of security. We completely trust the digital lens over our own gut instincts. Jake makes the rational, practical choice. He dismisses the anomaly. But as we're going to see, applying rational logic to a totally irrational event, yeah, that's his first major mistake.
Which brings us to Section 2, the second night escalation, when technology fails.
Okay, so the very next night, at exactly 2 a.m., that exact same rhythmic knock comes back. Now, one weird event, you can write that off as a bizarre coincidence. But twice? That's a pattern. And Jake isn't just groggy or annoyed anymore. Now he's getting nervous. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the terrifying disconnect between our two sources of truth. Look at side A, the digital truth. Jake checks the app again, and it still shows absolutely no one. The tech insists the porch is clear. But then look at side B, the physical truth. Jake actually walks up, looks at his front door, and sees a shadow moving underneath it. The camera is straight up lying to him. That invisible bubble of safety his smart devices provided just completely collapsed. There is a physical presence right outside his door, totally evading the digital sensors. You can imagine his heart is just hammering in his chest right now. The text describes him slowly inching toward the door. It's like that dark magnetic pull of the unknown, you know? Even though he's terrified, human instinct just compels him to confront the anomaly. He gets right up to the door and whispers into the quiet house. Who's there? And notice, he's whispering. He's kind of trying not to disturb the silence, almost hoping that if he speaks softly enough, whatever is out there won't fully manifest. But all he gets back in response? Absolute dead silence. Let's move to Section 3, the inside threat, the sanctuary breached. So at this point, Jake's attention is completely focused outward. He firmly believes this danger is stuck on the other side of a solid, locked door.
But suddenly, buzz. His phone vibrates right in his hand. It's a push notification from his security system. Motion detected inside your house. I mean, just pause and think about the sheer, paralyzing horror of that exact second. The narrative just literally flipped his whole assumption of safety upside down. The exact same tech that completely failed to warn him about the guy on the porch has just handed him the most terrifying update imaginable. The threat is not outside anymore. It bypassed the locks, totally slipped past the exterior cameras, and is now sharing the exact same enclosed space with Jake. The source material rapidly sequences how this trap just violently snaps shut on him. First, Jake freezes. He's totally paralyzed by the notification, and he slowly turns around. Second, he watches his own bedroom door creak open entirely by itself. So yeah, someone is definitely inside. Third, the flight response finally kicks in, and Jake tries to run. But fourth, click, the front door, his only way out, locks entirely on its own. The house has literally become a cage. And finally, a voice whispers right from behind him. "You shouldn't have ignored me." Those are the chilling final words delivered by the intruder. And wow, this reveals the sinister motive behind the whole sequence. This entity wasn't just trying to break in. It was testing Jake on that very first night. And because Jake made the rational choice, checking his camera, ignoring the knock, and going back to sleep, the entity perceived that as an insult. Jake failed the test. So now, the entity is enforcing a brutal, supernatural consequence just for his lack of attention. Which takes us to Section 4, the disappearance, the empty house. In the cold light of the morning after, the actual facts from the police investigation are incredibly brief and just totally unresolved. The police show up, they search the property, and they find the house completely empty. No signs of a struggle, absolutely no forced entry, and literally no sign of Jake. He simply vanished into thin air from inside a locked house. He was never seen again. This perfectly ordinary guy in a quiet town was just erased from existence, leaving nothing but an empty shell of a house behind. And finally, Section 5, the lingering question. The haunting continues. Because the story doesn't actually end with Jake. If we look at this timeline, it brilliantly illustrates how one tiny, easily dismissed moment spirals into a permanent haunting. Night 1, the ignored knock. Night 2, the violent, impossible intrusion. The next morning, total disappearance. And today, well, the text actually states that even today, every single night at exactly 2 a.m., someone still knocks on that exact same door. The cycle just reset. The anomaly wasn't satisfied, and it definitely didn't move on. The trap is still sitting there, armed, waiting, in that quiet town for the next person to hear the sound. Which leaves us with the ultimate question posed by our source material. Knowing everything you know now, knowing that your cameras will flat out lie to you, knowing that ignoring the anomaly might actually be the very thing that seals your fate, if you were sitting in that house tonight, the clock strikes 2 a.m., and you hear those 3 deliberate knocks echoing through the halls, tell me, would you open it? I'll leave you to think about that one tonight. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer.